So this is the dish I've really been looking forward to doing for you. This is my winter oxtail broth. It's a bit of a story behind this one, but essentially this is about purity of cookery and purity of flavour. You see, in classical French gastronomy, it's all about building up layers of flavour, layer upon layer upon layer, which then creates this harmony, sort of taking a product and making it more than the sum of its parts. With something like oxtail and this particular method, this is all about extracting all of that pure flavour, leaving it alone and adding as little as we can to maximise the purity of that product. This is one of the most delicious things I think I cook. I think it's wonderful. We cook it all the time and it's very simple, but oxtail is an ingredient that's quite tricky to get hold of and is more expensive than you would imagine it would be, but ultimately there's only one on an animal, so you have to remember that. So what you need to do is just find that piece of join there between the vertebrae and then turn that up. Just run your finger down and there'll be a slight dip through, then you can just slide your knife straight through. And what I'm not going to do is avoid any of the fat on here. I'm going to lean into the fat that's on here. I really want to try and keep hold of that. Such an incredible piece of meat. You see all this really high meat density product, but obviously this is tough. This needs a long, slow cooking. And you want to cut straight through the vertebrae there, through the cartilage, so you're not getting any bone, and you just got really lovely pieces of oxtail there. Straight through like that. Looks really pretty. I just think oxtail, pound for pound, is one of those products that is absolutely delicious. I normally get about 3 portions out of one whole oxtail, but they do depend on size. So now we need a really good heat-proof pan, and we need to set aside about half an hour to brown these. It's all about the browning of the oxtail. Okay, so that's this bit you really need to lean into. This takes time, and this is where all of that flavour is really coming from. So you just really take your time to brown the oxtail all over, otherwise the dish will just be a little bit insipid and it just won't have that depth. That depth is genuinely coming from this beautiful coloration here. Turn that over, and that fat, I'm not worried about any of that fat in there. I want that fat in there. Lean into that a little bit. What you don't want to do is let the pan cool down to a point where the oxtail is boiling in there. So keep the pan at a temperature that it can keep frying the meat, if you like, browning it beautifully. And if it does get a little bit hot, I would be turning the oxtail onto the fat side and letting the fat render out. And if it got a bit cold, I would be turning it up a bit or lifting a couple of pieces up like this so that there's less contact on the bottom of the pan. It's kind of how I would be controlling that pan, really. But just take your time, lean into this bit, don't shy away from the amount of colour you need to get on this oxtail. So the next stage of our beautiful oxtail is we've got that fantastic colour. This is where all of the depth of flavour comes from. And remember, there's no layering up here, there's no wine. There's no alcohol, no port, no brandy going in there. There's no chicken stock going in here. So we're completely reliant on what happens in this pan. That's really important. So I'm really happy with that colour. I'm also really happy that the pan's not burnt or scorched. It's got lovely bits of residue in there as well. Lots of sediment that I can indulge in. And there's our browned oxtail. What needs to go in there now is some nice vegetables. So we are layering with a little bit of vegetable, but we're not layering with any alcohol or anything like that. This is going in the oven for 3 hours, so you want to make sure you keep that vegetable at a really decent size. There is one thing that's going in here that's a little bit different, that's going to bring some flavour, probably another dynamic, kind of contradicts what I've been saying, but I do think it's important to have, with any braised beef, I always use this, which is star anise. So I'm going to put one of those in here. That's enough. I'm going to put some thyme as well as part of my mirepoix. Lovely fresh thyme. Oh, when the thyme is frying in the oil and you feel that, and you can smell it and feel it and hear it, and that's when you're cooking. That 1 star anise is just going to give it a little bit of lift. It really helps beef products like that elevate inside. So I want to colour this as well as I've coloured my beautiful oxtail. That vegetable is all nice and brown now. In goes our oxtail. Bury that really deep inside the pan with all the veg. Keep the heat up now, keep it going. And normally with any kind of classical braise at this point, we'd be adding layers of vinegar, layers of port, layers of red wine, layers of Armagnac, brown chicken stock in there, all that kind of stuff, making that harmonious process happen. But we're not into that here. We're trying to make something that's really pure. I almost regrettably don't want to add the vegetables. So pack that up really nicely. Turn the heat down a bit. Don't waste this lovely stuff here. This is wonderful flavour. See that? Then we're going to go straight in with water. So remember, you are making a soup here, so you want that stock to come up to the point at which it sits on top of the oxtail. Then we want to pop in there a nice paper lid, a cartouche that fits nicely. We bring that up to the boil. That then wants to see 3 hours at 160 degrees in a very low oven. Really beautiful. So after 3 hours at 160, that oxtail is going to be absolutely beautiful, soft and succulent. What you want to do is take that out of the oven, leave it on the side and let that pan cool right down. If you can, put that pan in the fridge overnight and leave it alone. I would never deal with this oxtail on the same day as which I cooked it. I would always let it sit overnight. If you sit overnight, we cook this all the time, so we're on repeat with this, so it's kind of, we've always got a pan of it hanging around. So if you've got it cooked, take it out now. What I now need to do is deal with that oxtail, lifting them out, and then I'm just gonna push out that meat from the bone, like I showed you before, like that. And we try and discard any of that nasty fat, but we want the pieces of meat, and try to take the meat out as whole as you can, so you get really nice big pieces of meat. If they're at the right temperature, they will just sort of slide out actually. You've got to navigate around all that fat and gristle and stuff, get involved in it, but once you do, you will be yielded with far more meat than you realised, and all of it is incredibly delicious. 100% beautiful protein. Right, so there's our lovely cooked meat there. Then in here, we've just got all the bones left over. They're going to go back in here because they're holding on to all the flavour and juice. And now what we need to do is just bring that to the boil so we can melt all that stock and pass it off beautifully. So back in here now, we've taken all that meat off the bone. That's all now nice clean meat, no fat, no gristle. In here is that beautiful stock that we created. Still got all the bones and the vegetables in there. We're just bringing that up to the boil now, and we're going to just pass that off. And a shimmer, warm all that up, and it goes into there. And all that coming through there is just beautiful oxtail nectar. What I'll do now is bring that up to the boil again and just skim off a little bit of that fat. So back into the pan, back up to the boil, and then we'll just skim away a little bit of that excess fat, and then we'll start to build this up as a little dish for ourselves. So when you want to skim that off, just lay the ladle in, use the underside of the ladle to swill it round, and what you're doing is pushing the fat all the way to the outside of the pan, and then you can just turn it the other way and then just run the ladle down, just very gently catching that fat on the edge. I'm always very conscious about how much we skim off because you're taking away an awful lot of flavour there, so just be very conscious of not taking away too much. And actually that fat in there is wonderfully delicious, so we don't want to take too much, but we do want it to be quite pure. To finish this beautiful soup, what we need to do is just get some lovely mushrooms. I've got chanterelles here. Just going to pop some butter in there. In goes these chanterelles. These are yellow leg chanterelles. They've been washed. There's quite a lot of water in them. Quite like that though. We can lean into that. In they go. I'm just going to finely slice some shallots into that as well. Beautiful. In they go. And you'll see very quickly that pan will cool right down with the amount of water in those mushrooms. In goes some salt into that. In goes some black pepper. And just let that melt down. Basically with any mushroom like this, we're looking to cook it down until the majority of that, you can see me? The majority of that water has been cooked out of the mushroom, and that's essentially when you know you're there. But so just cook that down, and they're taking the shallots with them on this little journey to soften all the way down, and then in is going to go our wonderful meaty oxtail, and then we're going to pop the stock on top. So you can hear those mushrooms just starting now to fry, and that's exactly where we want them to be. There's something so wonderful about mushrooms and shallots cooking together like that. Just beautiful. It's just delicious. Okay, into that goes the wonderful oxtail meat. Okay, while that's all coming up to temperature, the last piece of this little jigsaw is some thyme chantilly. So we've got double cream, standard double cream. We've got some very finely chopped thyme, fresh thyme in there. A little bit of salt. And we're just going to whisk that until we end up with a kind of a light chantilly cream. And it all will be revealed. Okay, so there's that lovely oxtail. That is becoming a beautiful pan of loveliness. So to finish this, all we need now is some wonderful chopped parsley, which goes in there like that. Just turn that right down. And if you see in there, you've got the chunks of oxtail, you've got the shallots, you've got the chanterelles, you've got a little bit of chopped parsley, and this amazing broth that's been made from water. But it's extracted all that pure flavour from the oxtail. And I can't tell you how utterly delicious, healthy and nutritious that is for you. All that now needs is a bowl and a spoon. I think this would be my absolute ideal winter family sharing dish. The depth of flavour here. This is a French onion soup with bells on. You know, this is proper cooking. Indulgent, delicious, pure. Oh, what a thing of beauty. And then what I would be doing, I would be serving out of that into this bowl here. A nice portion of that. And then I would be taking our wonderful Chantilly cream. Just watch as that cream melts into that, and when you eat it, and the purity of it as the cream melts into it is just... This is one of the most special things that I think there is to cook. I haven't made this for like a year. Honestly, if you lit a fire and opened a bottle of red wine, ate this, you wouldn't want anything else. See why she married me, can't you?